Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Fits here at Blackstone, the center of the world. But then you too are at the center of the world. We'll talk about that later. The title of this talk is When the Glow Wears Off. When the Glow Wears Off. So Trump announced that he was running again last night, and I heard from on our family grapevine that a Republican who is always a lifelong Republican, lifelong Republican, said, "I'm not going to vote for that idiot again." The glow has worn off. So let's talk about that glow. What is the glow but that of charisma? Celebrities, politicians, leaders get charisma. Charisma, like JFK had charisma. RFK, MLK had charisma. In the 60s, if you had charisma, you got shot. But charisma is most valuable because the worst thing your political party can endure is when the other party that gets a leader with charisma. Obama had charisma. Look what happened with Obama. Biden, no charisma. And no Republican had charisma in the main party. There were some with charisma, but they were rebel parties. Wallace, these leaders of separatist movement had charisma, but not the main party. So Trump was really the first mainstream Republican, GOP, that I can remember that had, Reagan. Reagan had charisma. So since Reagan, none of them had any charisma. And look what happened. Look what happened. Charisma, according to Albert Lowe, my Zen teacher, who wrote about dynamic unity and described it as charisma. When a person has charisma, the whole world comes drawn. It's like an eye of a hurricane. Before the hurricane forms, there's just winds blowing around, little winds blowing everywhere. And when the dynamic center, see, a center has to be. This is a dynamic center. This is there's dead centers and there's dynamic centers. A dead center is something from the past, but a dynamic center is one that's living. So a living dynamic center is like the eye of a hurricane that is really empty, but it attracts all the wind. And the winds come and go around and around and around the dynamic center. Now, is this one wind? Hurricanes grow. So one of the signs of a dynamic center is it grows. And it must keep growing, because if it begins to contract, it shrinks as fast as it grew. So it's kind of like, whoa, and then suddenly at some point, the string, the rubber band gets stretched to its limit and it begins to come back. Whoa, and then finally, poof. It's just back to being random winds. Like when a hurricane, powerful Category 5 in the ocean, hits the land, it begins to fade, it begins to shrink until it's just, by the time it gets to Blackstone, it's just a 10-mile-an-hour breeze. The mighty hurricane that destroyed the beaches of Florida, by the time it gets here, just makes the flags, it's just a breeze. 10 miles an hour. So you could say, within an analogy, that the center of the hurricane, doggone it, I forgot my mic again, I swear. All of my talks are going to start out weak and then they'll get stronger. But we're talking about something that starts out strong and gets weaker. So we're looking at Trump last night, who said, I'm running again. I'm running again. And is he running again? What's he running again? He's running a pattern. He's running a pattern that worked before, but now people are seeing through it. They see the pattern. And now when you see the pattern, it's boring. I've seen it before. The pattern has no charisma. The charisma comes is the dynamic center that is new, and it is given flesh and blood by a human, and that human then becomes charismatic when energy of the people is given to it and he gives it back. So the dynamic center is kind of like an exchange. You can see this in rock, you saw it in Trump's rallies, but also in rock music. When you go to a rock concert, the musicians are the dynamic center, and this energy goes out and it comes back like a mic in the amplifier, and it goes wow, 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 and it expands. And you lose yourself in the music. You lose yourself in the concert, Forget yourself. You forget your little center, and you become part of the big center, you see. You lose your sense of being just a piece, and you become the whole. You lose your sense of being just a spoke, and you become the wheel, you see. So there's a feeling of expansion and loss of separation when you're in the orbit, gravitational pull of charisma and of the dynamic center. So if you look at a Trump rally, see, it's kind of like a rock concert. So there was a flow of energy, of love, going out to the people and the people giving it back, you see. And so it feeds itself, you see. And that's what, the hurricane is not made of separate little winds. It's made of a pair of opposites. So you look at a wheel. Now the wheel's got a hub, an axis, and the wheel's got a periphery. So all the spokes, each spoke is a person, and they all go out to these little centers on the rim. So, but when the dynamic center is created, all of the little wheels on the periphery, you see, are now spoked to the one wheel, and so all of their energy, you see, is focused on the center, and the center is kind of like a mirror that reflects it back. So this is an accelerating energy, an energy of love, you could say. Some people think it's divine. That's why the center, the dynamic center, is always felt to be given, or he comes from down the elevator, he comes from above, down the escalator to this mortal realm, you see. So the center leader, the center, is given a sacred feeling, is given a sacred of being beyond mortality. Of course, in the ancient civilizations, these were gods. They didn't mess around. The emperor was a god, you see. No doubt about it. A god-man. Well, rational world, the modern world, the empirical, materialistic world has wiped all that out. There are no gods. But we do have charisma. And when a charismatic leader happens, history changes. History moves. Things change, you see. Because everything has to adapt to that leader. It's kind of like with Trump. If you look at the wide scale, so Trumpism was like a hurricane with a dynamic center. But notice that the eye of the hurricane is empty. There's nothing there. So there's nothing in Trump as the dynamic center. All that's there is the charisma, is the feeling that you get by being part of the wheel, by being something bigger, you see. We lose our little separate sense of being a victim. So I think that was the charisma and magic of Trump, was that he made victims feel winners. If you're a victim, if you feel like the world is taking away your freedoms, the world is you're just a cog in the wheel. You're no longer a man. You're no longer a true man. You're no longer in control. You see, you're just like you're being buffeted by the winds. You're just punching clocks. Your life has no meaning. You're just a cog in the machine, you see. Talking about the machine. These conspiracy theories, oh, the machine is controlling. We feel controlled. We feel we've lost our center. So then a charismatic leader comes along and says, I am the center. I am America. I am true man. I will save you from being a victim. I'll make you a winner. And so with that, it was like magic. All the people who felt to be a victim of the machine, or with having lost their privilege of being special, you see, flocked to the center like people going to a rock concert. And it just got louder and louder, bigger and bigger and bigger. Then the bigger it got, the more true it seemed. But suddenly conditions have changed and the hurricane has gone over reality. And suddenly, overnight, the hurricane Trump is shrinking. And when it begins to shrink, people leave it as fast as they joined it. About rats leaving the ship, you know. They just don't see it anymore. They just don't feel it anymore. They just don't believe it anymore. So, that's a wide-angle view. What happens when the glow of charisma wears off? Thanks for dropping in.